Folks, hello and welcome to Talking Crit. I am one of your hosts, Eric Tenkar, your bartender in the OSR, and with me, as you will find every Wednesday night, come hell or high water, convention or otherwise, vacations don't matter, Bad Mike Battalato.
Thank you, Eric. And I'm not on vacation yet. You're looking behind me, people are going, oh, that's the usual background we get when Mike's in the South Padre Island vacation
Yep,
place. It's got
full
that
me.
weird window back. No, this is my backyard here. So this is actually my house. Because for those of you who will from last week, the internet went out of the warehouse, and we're probably not going to bother with it till I get back in December. So one last show here tonight in at the house, and then off to South Padre, and then we'll have five shows at the beach.
Yeah.
And I'll prove it. I'll bring the computer out there so you can see the waves rolling in at night. And it's
That'll
it's
be
the
awesome.
actual. We'll be right by the beach, and just like Eric shows the Poconos, it's just we don't take time off, man. We're here for you. We do, we know if you missed a week, it would just be devastating, absolutely devastating. For you guys, for us too.
Yeah, we'd be like, something's missing, but you all would be like, holy crap, where's our weekly goodness? Where's our news?
Well, here's what's funny. So the year that you got really sick and we really started doing this in earnest was 2020, I believe, right?
Yep.
And so
Yeah.
we did it during the summer, and we were pretty steady. And then we went for an annual trip, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do the show every week during the annual trip. And I think he said something like, well, you don't have to. You're going to be on vacation. I said, no. We need to do this every week now. We need to do this every Wednesday night. We can't skip days or take time off because, hey, Kim, how you doing? Because that's the whole thing. Shows succeed when you pick a day and you pick a time and you stay there and you don't jump around. I can't tell you how many game conventions that I know of that have gone under. And really a big part of them going under was the fact they couldn't decide when was their time. They're like, okay, we're going to be the first week in May, and the next year we're going to be the middle of July, and the year after that we're going to be, back to May, and the year after that we're going to be in September. It just never works. It doesn't work with shows either. You want to show. Remember we were kids and we were watching shows, and back then, if a show came on, you never got to see it again. You're like,
Right.
Okay, if you missed an episode of Hill Street Blues, that was it. You did not. There was no repeats. There was no, channels that held. There was no internet. There was nothing. You just missed that episode, and you didn't see it till 25 years later when it was on Netflix or something. You go, oh yeah, I missed that episode. Well, that's like then the TV shows would fail. The reason that shows would fail is they'd move them around. They'd have them one week and Monday night, then they have them Thursday night, then back to Monday night, then Sunday night, and the show would fail because nobody knew when to watch the show.
Right. But back then too, when they would move those shows around, if the show was a moderate hit, it was being moved around to knock an opponent, knock another network show down in the ratings, kill them. I think this would do with WKRP to the point where KRP turned into crap because nobody could find it and
you remember the 90s when ER was just the monster show it was? ER was like kids nowadays don't know. Yeah, ER was insane. It ruled Thursday night. Absolutely ruled. It gave NBC number one Thursday nights for like 20 years, however long it was on. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was people would try to move shows to compete with it. So you'd have a favorite show and you go, oh, we're going to move to Thursday night. You'd be like, oh man, that's not a good move because sure enough, they just could never topple ER. And so they would just end up getting canceled. You knew a show was done when they decide they're going to move it across from ER. That's when they're like, okay, well that's the dead zone. That show is absolutely donezo. And, you get really, it's just a show you like, you're like, oh crap. Well, that's it,
Yeah. So, listen, back in the heyday of blogging and the tavern became pretty popular, I used to ask me, well, how do you become popular as a blog? And I said, well, the first thing you got to do is you got to find your rhythm. And I don't mean just in what you write, but when you put it out. I go, I happen to be somebody who has a schedule of, at the minimum, a post a day. But you can have success if you post, I don't know, every Wednesday or every Tuesday and Friday. But whatever your schedule is, find it and stick to it because people will look for you. They will find the pattern. And once they know the pattern, they will seek the pattern out. If you don't have a pattern, you will likely remain irrelevant. And
absolutely true.
And
and you got really good at. You've been really good for a while at. I remember you had this long streak where you posted twice a day on your blog.
Yep.
This is back when the blog was, big deal. Now I don't think you do that anymore.
No, it's once a day.
But yeah, you did that for like. Do you remember how long it was? It was a long time.
It was a long time. I know that I had a nice stretch going of I think 3 years without missing a blog post.
I know it was several years. Yeah.
And there was a several-year stretch where I was averaging three and a half posts a day. So
that's crazy.
I was still working at the time. I found that once I retired, I actually blogged less because I would generally at work as I was eating my breakfast. Eating my breakfast, I got my laptop with me. I'm putting up a post. Lunchtime, as I finish off my lunch, and I still have 20, 30 minutes left in my lunch, I'm still at my desk. I'm still answering questions, but I'm putting up a post. Get home, I'd put up a post. So but you were going to get at least one post a day. Now with the YouTube, we have certain live streams. You know that pretty much every Wednesday, every Friday, every Saturday, 8 o'clock. And the time is important too with these things. There's a live stream. If there's a fifth Friday, there might not be a live stream. But that's okay. But again, that's part of finding your rhythm. I've had people go, we got this great game coming up on. We're gonna be doing it Wednesday nights. It's like, oh, I can't do it. I do a live stream. Oh, just change your day. I go,
just skip the day. Yeah, I heard that a lot years ago. And I don't. My wife and everybody doesn't say that now, but because I remember when you said, okay, we're gonna be on Wednesday night. I was like, I want to say we did a couple of shows on Tuesday night or Monday night.
We could have.
Yeah, and then I'm like, Wednesday night. Yeah, but it worked out great because I'm thinking Wednesday night's good because it's just right in the middle of the week. And so you get, you do it and there's so many things happening in the week, so many things that happen over the weekend. And then you have Monday and Tuesday to think about it. And then by Wednesday, it's perfect. You're like, okay, here, we're going to throw this down. So I think Monday night, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are probably my three favorite nights for shows because I think you get the best. I don't know. It just seems like those work really, really well. So once we stuck with Wednesday night, that was what was cool. It was like, okay, let's just do it every Wednesday night. And I'm like, Wednesday night doesn't seem good, but it worked great because it doesn't interfere with anything in my life. Nothing. Right. There's nothing going on Thursday night. And so for those of you, God, you have to. I don't think anybody remembers this. So the Frog God channel. We have a talk or an open channel or whatever you call it, Discord channel there that we kind of like you do Thursday nights, right?
Right.
The Speakeasy.
Yep.
And I was on there, and so I would log in every Thursday night, and I did a live show for probably a year and a half. And before that, I did a show every Friday night. So the AKM, which is the collector site, big collectors online collector site, we had a live stream because Doug had set up the computer to link to the AKM spot. So for probably, I want to say 3 or 4 years, I did a Friday night show where I did not miss a Friday night. And it was on the AKM. And it was no voice chat. It was only chat because
text. Wow.
So I learned the value of just having the same night every time because that's how you got people to come to. James Spawn's on. Great. You have things in your life. Yeah, I do, James. I think things. It's not all just about B. Arthur, okay, and Golden Girls. I know it is about for you. So no, we got James on there. So anyway, boring. You don't really want to hear about our lives, but that's the origins. You got to remember the origins, otherwise you forget. And then Eric and I we're just two old men talking about shit. So we didn't really get a guest. That's a lot of it's my fault. I'm usually pretty good at scheduling that, but it's just been so much pre vacation stuff. But next week we will try to start getting some people in, so you don't have to watch us again and go, oh dear God, what are they going to talk about again? Because honestly, a lot of the subjects we usually talk about we're kind of quiet on that front right now. There's not a lot going on in the gaming news. There's a couple of stories we're going to touch on tonight.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll basically start. We'll riff off that and go into other things too. It's not just about B author. It's about pictures of B in a big, empty, lonely warehouse. I'm at home now. I'm at home tonight, James. I'm not lonely. I should bring my cat on. My poor cat doesn't get enough airtime on here. So
there you go.
We've seen Eric's cat before. Eric used to interrupt. His cat used to interrupt us all the time. Did your cat just get bored of walking in the camera and she's like, "Yeah, I don't care anymore."
Yep. It's like here's a tail in your face.
Yep. So, story wise, I mean, so we're not gonna. I guess there's really nothing on the new TSR front that's worth really
no
talking
updates
about.
since last week.
That's just gonna roll through the courts and do what it's gonna do. And
I believe the Wizards of the Coast responded earlier than they were required to, and that now means the court's waiting. I guess the big thing with the TSR Wizards of the Coast thing is, will the temporary protective order? Well, actually, there's two things rolling through it. But the one that started the ball was Wizards of the Coast saying, "Hey, we want to protect our trademarks. We don't want, as this case is going forward until it's resolved, we don't want TSR to use our trademarks, to use TSR, to use Star Frontiers.
Yeah.
It can damage our reputation if they do so." So that's the one I think we're supposed to be hearing about next. But that might be a temporary. I don't know if that was protective or restraining. You know what? I was in law enforcement for 20 years, but I had nothing to do with the civil side of the courts. So
right. So we'll wait. That's believe that's not going anywhere anyway. It's going to be rolling around for a while. So we'll get back to that eventually. And we for those of you who are around, we have talked a little bit about Victor Dorso's C&D against Gamers on Games, and that resulted in the absolute disappearance of one of the guys in the Gamers on Games channel.
Well, was it one of the guys? Because it claims that there's more than one guy, but I don't.
I think there's more than one guy because I see a bunch of names of game. I mean, it's Gamers on Games, not just one game on Gamer on Games. I don't know. Gamer on Games.
Well, hold on a second here. Hold on. There was something. Okay. No. Oh wow. This. Oh, I think his current video. The work was created by me, but developed with help from Brandon Stanbo. Here's a new episode up, by the way, folks. Just so you know.
Which is basically a reprint of an old episode because he pulled down everything he had, and I have a feeling he may be going through it, see if there's any content that might violate the C&D, and so he's going to slowly start He took everything down. He's going to start going through it. So which is a great thing now. He's actually posting just gaming content, which he should do. That's right. Probably what he should just do is post gaming content because I've been surprised online by the amount of vitriol that's come out about this guy. I mean, that I didn't know. I didn't know. I just knew his terrible takes on stuff that Eric and I did, and it just annoyed us. But apparently, we weren't the only people he pissed off. Pissed a lot of people off because some of the threads I've seen on him just go on and on about stuff. But I honestly don't want to spend a lot of time about that either. That seems to be that's done, and hopefully he'll get help, because he had a really weird video this week where he posted the "Suicide is Painless" song from MASH, and it's weird. I hope he gets help. Hope he's fine. He probably doesn't need to be doing this anymore because this is for people who have really, really thick skin. Which Eric and I do. We have super thick skin. We get called every name. Eric gets sued by Lanos. I mean, you have to have thick skin in this.
Yeah, you gotta. It comes with the territory. I hate to say that, but I mean, over my career as a blogger and a vlogger, I've had some big names in the industry make these generally vague threats of legal action I believe the first one I got was from Gail Gygax, and it wasn't even over something that I
Oh
posted.
yeah, I remember
It
that. I
was
forgot about
somebody.
that. Yeah,
It's somebody who
forgot all
commented
about
on the
that.
blog, and since they apparently messed up between the Gygax Memorial Fund and the Revocable Gygax Trust,
Oh
they
right,
screwed that up.
yes, two
I could
totally
be
different
held
things. Yes,
responsible, and I had to make a
yes,
public statement that even though I didn't state this, and therefore it's not my words, and it's therefore I'm not the one to be threatened.
right.
Since and I shared her legal threat because some people literally believe that they're going to make a legal threat and it's going to shut you up. Gail knew that there was going to be a shit ton of um, eyes, mostly mine, being put on the Gygax Memorial Fund, and I was getting her nervous and upset, and to the point where
Boy, I tell you what, we need a follow-up show on that someday. Talk about going back to the well for that.
well,
Nothing's happened with that. Now it's been 2 or 3 years, and that thing is still nothing's going on with that. We still don't know what's going on with the fund. We still haven't heard any process or what's going on with the statue. I mean, that thing is just that's been 10 years and counting now.
yeah,
That's crazy.
actually I can. Do you know when I was told about issues with the Gygax Memorial Fund? I was told the day before Hurricane Sandy rolled in.
Jeez, so that's a decade. No,
Yeah,
that's not a decade.
yeah,
That's
it's a decade. Um,
holy crap.
yeah, it's a decade. I was in Manhattan at Rattle and Hum, and this was a bar that was right across the street from Complete Strategist. And I was,
2012. You're absolutely October of 2012. We almost had the anniversary, October 22nd. So
yeah.
that's wow.
So I was told
That's
that
10 years.
by, well, I guess we are a decade on, we are a decade past. I'll let you know person did not give me details, by the way.
Mhm.
Person just told me if you want an interesting rabbit hole, start digging into the Gygax Memorial Fund.
Oh, what a rabbit hole that
And
became.
that was Tavis Allison, a name, a
Oh
delightful
yeah,
girl.
from Venture Conqueror King did some stuff with
Yes.
that, did Dwimmer Mount, some other things. Oh yeah.
Yep. And Joe the lawyer was a witness.
Mhm.
So,
That's crazy.
but yeah,
That's still I don't see her posts because she used to have really nutty posts every about once or twice a year, and I don't really. Whoever's controlling her feed at this point has got her not to post. Thank goodness, because it was bad.
well,
She'd post something really bad, and then it would be taken down in a couple hours, and the only
yeah,
way you'd ever know was posted if you had screenshots because maybe I don't know.
yeah.
It seemed to me that some of those were really not in her right mind when she made them, and then they'd be gone. They'd be gone the
Yeah.
next morning. So you're like,
Well,
oh, okay.
isn't Paul Stormberg in charge of the GMF now? Isn't he the
He
president?
is now. Maybe he's doing it really well, and that's why we're not hearing about it. That would
If
be good if
if it was doing well, you'd hear people trying to raise money for it. Now this is good. This reminds me, I gotta check their tax returns. It's due to have another tax. I haven't looked in like 6 months, so it's due to be a new tax return. And tax
Oh
returns
boy.
tell the story. All right, when you see it's money going out and nothing happening with this project, you
It's weird that
know.
this much money was given to something, and yet gamers seem to have just told. It's weird because gamers latch onto weird stuff, and they'll go, like the Satine and Jameson thing. That was hot for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
It was
It
hot
was
for a hot minute. Yeah.
everywhere. Everybody had a story. There was a whole website set up where people could tell their own Jameson and Satine evil, how bad they were stories. It went, I mean, just you could not turn the computer on without hearing something, and it went on and on. It was a big deal. And now nothing. You don't hear a thing about them. Now, a lot of that's because they've got off social media, which is probably pretty smart. I know that Satine still makes tearful videos about how sorry she is all this stuff happened, but they pretty much shut it down, which is smart. That's not stupid, but that was really hot for a while. And you get stories like that blow up and they go away, but this seems like a weird story just to go away. Is that the Gygax Memorial Fund had over $50,000 in it, and
Oh
there's
well,
still no statue after
dude,
10 years.
nearly $250,000.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry, 250. Yes, it
Right.
had almost
It had
250,000,
almost
and
250.
then just went
The
away.
vast majority of those monies came from, I believe, the reprints of the AD&D 1A Player's
The
Handbook,
reprints of the
DMG
books,
monthly manual,
but there was a lot
and
of donations. I know. Yeah,
yeah, that was it. And I believe that the monies also came from what you call it.
they had an auction one year. They had an auction one year
Yeah, the
at
auction.
Gen
Yeah,
Con. That and they donated a portion or all that money from the charity auction. One year, the charity auction went all to the Gygax Moral Fund. But I bet they wish they could do a take back on that one. And then I know they had private donations because I'm pretty sure Doug sent them $100 in the name of. I know he sent them $100 in the name of North Texas RPG Con. So we're out that $100, yeah, that they were pretty big, and everybody was going on, and she had the terrible statue she's going to put up, and then she's going to put up a certain spot, and then they wouldn't let her, and it just went on for a while, and then now it just seems to kind of just fade away, and nobody talks about it, and yet there's close to $250,000 gone from the community and then the object of what they were going to do. Now she popped up again, I want to say this summer or earlier in the year, and said something along the lines of, "Yeah, we're still working on it." And that was all. Pretty much, it was a couple of posts about we're still working on it. We want to get this done, and we're going to talk to him. And they had this huge log jam, which is she wanted the statue in a certain part of the park. Yep. The city council said no, and that was it. And they're just absolutely landlocked on that. They're not moving forward one bit because I guess neither of them are backing down.
Well,
she's not,
she's no longer in charge, though, right?
Yeah,
it's now now Paul. Kim says there seems to be some new plans coming up. Well, hopefully, the new plans include somebody other than the sculptor who did the Fonzie statue, doing the statue. They're not using the Elmore plans anymore. Larry Elmore plans seem to be off. Listen, they can do something a lot more subtle, a lot less gaudy. I think that's part of the issue too, with Lake Geneva and with the local government. I think
the
gaudy was being shown.
The one little square that his children set up. That's the place everybody goes now. They all go and they take pictures in front of that square, and they put dice there, and people lay there and stuff. That's become a place everybody goes. I don't even know if we need a statue at this point, because that's the meeting place, and that's the place that everybody wants to go and hang out and take pictures in front of. I don't know if a statue would do any better or worse or anything. It'd be nice to see something happen with the money someday, because that money was all donated for the purpose of being a statue.
Part of the cause for that money was to use it toward education and scholarships. It's part of the tax filings. They've never attempted that, as far as I know, ever.
They had an announcement about 8 years ago that Gail and her sister, and this is like an official press release. I don't know how we got down this rabbit hole again, but we did. But there was an official press release that they were going to go to schools and they were going to support educational things using D&D as a way to teach kids, I don't know, math and this and that. And that never became anything. That was just a press release. Nothing ever happened in a story for that one too.
Smoke and mirrors. By the way, Peter Pham, I wonder if things are on hold until the will issue is settled. But they're two totally different things, because
I know they're different things, but it could be also.
Yeah, but the will is fighting over what is effectively the revocable trust. The Gary Gygax revocable trust. That is where the IP that Gary has and his personal works, that's tied up in that. That's what Gail threatened me with legal action over, because somebody couldn't figure out the difference between that. The Gygax Memorial Fund is a actual not-for-profit. It is registered. It has a board of 3. It's all in the family. So say what you will. So they are totally different entities. There is nothing in the will that has anything from what I've read, from what I've seen, the arguments I've heard, that has anything to do with the
Yeah, and that won't
Obvious
change.
no predator.
Even if they decide that will's valid, that won't change anything in the moral fund, will it? The moral
No.
fund is just the moral fund. So that's always going to be sad part of Gail's purview until until something, whatever. And Paul Stormberg. But so for those who don't know, Paul has been selling the collection of Gary Gygax for a few years now on his site, bit by bit. So,
Or had been.
I mean, all
That got
yeah,
held up in the court.
right. But so I don't think he's going to do anything to make Gail mad at him or to upset there. And so for those that don't even know, when Doug was still alive, Paul approached him about because Gail wanted Paul to pay money to sell. It was something, I don't know. Anyway, Paul had to give Gail like $15,000, something along those lines. Paul borrowed the money from Doug Ray. And Doug gave him the money, and then he paid Doug back very quickly. But Doug was a little bit involved in him getting the Gygax collection. And I can't remember why she made him pay for the privilege of auctioning off, but maybe it was shipping, because she had to ship everything that was in the basement to Paul's house. And it was apparently a lot of stuff. Because there at the time he said that he would probably be auctioning this the rest of his life. I mean, that's how much, from what I understood, how much stuff he got. It was so much stuff, just boxes and boxes.
So a little behind the scenes history on the will and why it went down as it happened. My understanding, and this is not from anybody, not from any of the offspring, but still from somebody who is close to the ongoing saga, is that we had heard in the community, there were whisperings that there was a second will.
Right.
The reality is, when Gary passed, no will was filed for probate. Why is that? Because the offspring believed that the value of the estate in question of Gary's works was less than $50,000, and it wasn't worth going to probate over that. They were like, "We're not going to file the will. We'll just leave it for Gail." It was kind of like, what? It's not worth fighting for, and she probably needs the money more than any of us do. Mm-hmm. Let's fast forward to when Gail is trying to license Gary's work to the producer of one of the producers of the Transformers, and he's ready to sign, and then he doesn't sign. He backs out. And why did he back out? I can't tell you for sure, but I am going to hypothesize. I am going to spin. And I'm going to spin that he heard through his sources, maybe directly from somebody, that, hey, Gail does not have the rights that she's trying to license. Don't make that deal. The family is going to fight for it. Because shortly after that, we hear about the dispute in the will. But again, it wasn't a new will. It was the old will. And that was just never filed. So now how did we get to the fact that why did they file now? Because the amount of shit that Paul was selling, all right, the amount of Gary's collection Paul was selling, and he already put up an index pretty much of everything that was left to be sold. And the family, when I say the family, I exclude Gail from that. I should say the offspring, Gary's offspring, came to the realization late in the game that, holy shit, this is worth a lot more than $50,000. At which point they filed the will. So that is the story as best as I know it. Am I saying that I'm 100% right? I'm not saying that.
There's a lot of, and so Gail and the family got along okay for a while, and I remember seeing her at a few of the early Gary cons, but they got crosswise eventually, and she had a lot of accusations against him and against the family and against Luke, and they don't get along anymore. Now, for those that don't know, because I keep forgetting, we have a lot of people on that probably don't know all the. I saw Gunn had something there so. He has 3 daughters and 2 sons, Ernie and Luke, and then 3 daughters, Lise. Oh God, I forget their. I can't forget their names. Heidi, Elise, and Oh my God. I'm so sorry, Gygax people. 3 daughters, 2 sons. Alex Gygax, the youngest son, is the only child of Gary and Gail. So Alex is the half brother of all the rest of the siblings. So they got crossways with her, and I think in the last few years, Alex might even got crossways. I don't know. I don't want to speculate. That's absolute speculation.
Cindy is the missing daughter.
But she posted some really weird stuff a few times. One of the posts was about how people were trying to assassinate her because she found some traps in her house, like they were.
There was one on the back stairs leading down from the porch. I remember that one because there was an inference that Tenkar.
You must have had something to do with that because you were so dumb you're going to put a tripwire or something on her back.
Yeah.
I mean, it was real paranoid, crazy stuff, and just I've heard stories over the years I won't even go into because they're private stuff, but she just and she got crossways, and then she said that they won't invite me to GaryCon even though it has his name. Well, there was a big lawsuit about over Gygax magazine where that if they wanted to settle it, they had to admit they would never disparage her again. They walked away from that settlement, so that there's a lot of ill will between the Gygax family and then between Gail, and so that's one of the reasons. Probably another reason this whole will thing is going on because they're not really good terms with her anymore,
right?
And then there was a lot of speculation. Absolute speculation. I don't know. There's any truth to it that the monies had been people taking money out. There was some people on the board of directors that said they weren't on the board of directors. They never remember going to a meeting or being on the board of directors.
But now here's the thing. When I first started looking, and by the way, Paul, Mr. Gunn, Paul Stormberg. Stormberg's history is that he is basically an auctioneer of collections of members of the Old Guard. This is what he does. Yep. It's a specialty.
That's his full-time job, and that's what he does. And he's done it for many, many years now. Where he'll like auction collections from guys like Mike Carr and Alan Hammock and just all these famous people. He'll get them to Dennis. I mean, go on. Anybody that's been a famous guy has probably had, and he gets usually maximum priceless stuff because he has a little certificate that goes with it, and it's signed by everybody. It says this is from the collection of blah blah blah.
Right.
And every once in a while, when I buy a collection, I'll find stuff in the collection that are from an auction, a Paul Stormberg auction. They'll have the little certificate in there. So he has probably cornered the market on doing on auctioning off authentic D&D, whatever.
Paul
stuff.
is also the president now of the Gygax Memorial Fund. So now, when we're talking about people not knowing that they were associated with the Gygax Memorial Fund, once I started digging and pulling threads, when you saw on their website, you needed pretty much like oh God, what do you call those like visual flowcharts? It was so many names associated with this Gygax Memorial Fund. And I published it on my blog, and I started reaching out to a few of the people, and everybody I reached out to went, what the fuck? I'm not involved. Or, when they first set this thing up, I did X and then walked away. Why is my name? So there were
I think Jim Ward was one of those people. Jim Ward said, I don't know why
Jim
I'm on
was
there.
actually on the board.
Yeah, he said he was on the board
for a number of years.
And he don't think he ever had a meeting. They were just on the board of directors. And he's like, I don't know why I'm on there. And
so it was once it became public, then all of a sudden, all but I think 5 names got trimmed off that list.
So if you want, conspiracy theory time here. So when Gary died, he had a bunch of stuff being published by Troll Lord Games. And for those of you who already heard the history, it's probably maybe you guys have it, but whoever hasn't heard it, most of it being published by Troll Lord Games. On the advice of a lawyer, and so her sister is married to a lawyer, Gail's sister. And if you look at over the years, it's been mainly Gail, her sister, and her brother-in-law, her sister's husband, who's a lawyer. That's who have really driven a lot of the thing that's been going on the last few years.
Those are the members of the board, or were for the longest time.
And she's said before, she's even said unsolicited that if she passes away, all the rights to the Gygax thing go to her sister and her brother-in-law, which none of it goes to the kids. It all goes to them, which would be weird. But anyway, she got advice and from lawyerly advice, and it may have been her brother. I don't know who it was, but they pulled everything Gary published, Troller Games, and renewed any of the contracts, which is one of the reasons why Cast as a Gig is almost impossible to find now, the box set that we talked about a few weeks ago, and why Jeff wasn't allowed to publish anything else after that. And they pulled every single thing that had anything to do with Gygax. There, at this point, right now, there is absolutely 0 items that Gary wrote that are in print unless they're from TSR. Nothing that he did otherwise. They have pulled, on advice of counsel, they pulled everything he did because they had this plan. They were going to have something called Gygax Publications, and they were going to republish all their stuff himself. Well, here it is. It's been over 10 years and they haven't. And then they're probably never going to.
A decade and a half almost. Yeah.
Yeah. They're never going to do it. And it's left a lot of sour taste in the industry because they did nothing with it. And there was reports at one time that Gail wanted $1 million for the right to publish stuff under Gary's name. I don't know if that's true or not, but at this point, his name isn't worth $1 million because nobody knows who Gary is anymore. All his stuff's been out of print now over a decade.
Yep.
And impossible to find. So whoever handled this, whoever gave ill advice, it's been widely speculated they really gave her some really bad advice because all they've done is while they consolidated all of Gary's IP, they've done nothing with it, not one thing, except when they were going to sell it to the Hollywood producer who was going to buy it. And then he quickly backed out of the deal. And as Eric said, there was speculation that he backed out of the deal because he found out about the second will. And whoa, if there's a second will, I don't need to do business with her. Right. I got to wait to see who actually owns the rights to this. And so he actually pulled out of the deal.
We initially heard it as a second will, but the actuality is it's the only will.
Right.
And that's an issue too. She was operating under basically the rest of the family's goodwill. And if she hadn't, I suspect if she hadn't gotten greedy and wanted all this money, if she had these auctions running soft and slow and maybe making $25,000 a year, but what happened is these upcoming auction sheets or whatever, the inventory sheets, were being listed as in bundles of $50,000 value, estimated value. And when you put out 6 or 7 of these sheets, all of a sudden you're looking at something that was under $50,000 now worth $250,000 to $500,000. I can see why the family said, whoa, I guess we have to.
So we're on this whole thing, we're waiting. So the whole thing is being put absolute stop until this court, whatever decides the validity of this will, I guess. So we've been waiting on that, 2 years now? Things don't move very fast. Apparently, Wisconsin, they move very slowly
but it's not in Wisconsin. It is in Wisconsin. You're right. No, you're right. It is in Wisconsin. Hold on. Do I still have Walsworth County? Hold on. Let me.
James, it's not going to go public domain. No. It's 75 years after death. So we've got a long time to go, and nothing's going to be public domain. And it'll look. Gail isn't going to live 75 years, so it's at some point. And that's the other thing too is Gail passes away. Look for a fight between her sister and brother, and then whoever else wants, maybe their kids, because. I'm sorry, her sister and brother shouldn't have control of Gary's IP. No. They had nothing to do with anything he ever did. It as much as even if I thought otherwise, it should go to his children. So, right. But this is all. This is so much speculation because you just hear this stuff. The only thing you hear is stuff that are posted online, just tidbits and rumors and bits and pieces. It's just been a mess now. Ever since Gary passed away in 2008, correct? It's been a mess since then. So for the last 14 years, it's just been absolute. It went from this is it's so great she's going to honor his legacy and build a statue and this and that to where she doesn't do anything anymore with having to do anything with gaming. She's totally. Remember she floated an idea for a while she was going to have her own Gary Con, and she was even saying they shouldn't call it Gary Con. He was my husband. he was their father, sure, but he was my husband. So she tried to plan a Gary Con, and I don't think anything came of that. Like nothing came of that. She was trying to pull an Asa. It was going to be the same weekend as Gary Con.
Yeah.
It was called Gygax Con, and that never happened. So it's just been a mess since 2008. And it's one of those things. I guess Eric and I will just talk about it every couple of years or so until something ever gets done or happens with it someday. But it's really sad what happened to. And this is a very common theme when you get to these court cases for famous people who have IP. Is very very seldom do you get what, like Robert E. Howard. He passed away, and nobody thought anything he had was worth anything. His dad signed it over to. His good friend, a doctor. Oh God, I can't remember the guy's name. And it just kind of the IP floated around for years. So same with Lovecraft, just floated around. Nobody thought that stuff was worth anything, and eventually it landed at a certain spot. And unfortunately, in this day and age, most people grab the IP as soon as they can. That's what happened in this case, and they just consolidated it, and it's just been doing absolutely nothing for the past 14 years, which is really sad because. I mean, it'd be nice to see, what was the game? What was the game he did with Troll Lord? Dangerous Journey? No, what Dangerous Journeys?
No,
it was
Dangerous Journeys. Oh God, I have like multiple copies. Oh
dear.
I got the box set, and I have oh God. Well, in any case, listen. This legal action was filed March 27th, 2020. So we are already 2.5 years into this. Now, and I'm scrolling through
Legendary Adventures. That was his game system. Yes.
So the next update on this case, next court activity, there'll be a motion hearing on November 22nd at 9 a.m. And then by the end of the year, on New Year's Eve, the inventory due date is on New Year's Eve. So by that point, they already have the inventory because we know who did it, right? And actually, he's mentioned at one point in a recent filing, Paul Stormberg was provided with notice of intent to obtain a commission to take the deposition of Paul.
Well, he has all the stuff, so he has everything in Gary's basis. So yes, that would make perfect sense. He's been auctioning it off for the last few years.
That was at the end of September.
Yeah, so that would make perfect sense because he would have. Paul, you can say what you want about Paul, but he's a very thorough person. You know what I'm saying? And he's got. I'm sure he has all that.
All right, Mr. Gunn. The terms of the will were not unclear. The will was never filed.
Right.
So they allowed her to have everything because they all thought, the offspring felt that there was less than $50,000 value in what was in the estate.
And by the way, so the same thing happened to my father. My father never had a will. We never found a will of my father. So there was no, what you call, I guess, probate for his estate. It all went to my stepmom, which once again, we were the same way because he didn't own a lot. It didn't matter. And we figured she probably should have it anyway. I mean, myself and my brothers got nothing from the estate because he had talked about a will for years, but he either didn't put one up or he hid it so good that nobody ever found it. So he died. It's called insensate. I can't remember how you pronounce it. Insensate. I don't know. Ty, let us know. I don't know. And so he didn't have a will. So we didn't contest anything because we didn't care. He didn't own anything worth any money, enough to worry about. Now, if my dad's estate had been worth $500,000, might have said, okay, whoa, hold on. We want to know where this money was supposed to go. But since he really didn't have anything, we weren't super into that, tried to find it or whatever. But
Mr. Gunn, so here's the thing with Gary's IP. Yes, you got D&D, but you no longer have Legendary Adventures. You no longer have Castle Zagic.
Or the publications associated with that. There was a whole, there was a whole builder series called Gary Gygax Presents. And those were really nice books. They had the Gary Gygax Book of Names. They had The Thieves' Cant. They had a whole series, a cosmology book. Now, they weren't written by Gary, but they had Gary's name on it, Gary Gygax Presents name. Those were all very good. Well, those can't be sold anymore. Those are all 100% out of print and hard to find also. So all the Castles of Gig and City of Zagig and all that stuff, that's all out of print. City of Yegsburg, That's all out of print and can't find it. So there's quite a bit of material associated there. All the Gord the Rogue books, nobody can do a Gord the Rogue. That's all. He owned the rights to Gord, and that's all gone. As long as this is going on. So there's a bit of his IP has a bit of things in there. I don't think it's anything that's going to make anybody rich. And I think this Hollywood guy that was going to buy it, I have a suspicion that all he really wanted to do was to have a D&D type movie and say something like Gary Gygax Enterprises presents. Oh, who's Gary Gygax? Well, he's the guy that created D&D. Oh, well, this has got to be a great movie because it has Gary Gygax's name on it. And I think that was the whole point of probably buying it, because unless he was going to do a Gord the Rogue movie, I guess you could have done a Gord the Rogue movie, because Gary's IP was really weird. That there was no D&D stuff in it. Some people say that Castle Greyhawk is not even part of his IP, and that was sold to TSR when TSR bought. That was part of D&D, and so
Right.
That's why they had to call it Castle Zagig and not Castle Greyhawk, because they don't have the rights to Castle Greyhawk. Anyway, so it's interesting. That's going to be interesting to happen. Well, we got off on a side tangent there, Eric. That was, but that that's just something we talk. We'd have a show on about once a year, and you talk about it, and everybody can't believe that stuff's what's happening to it. But that's just the way it is. It's stuck in legal hell, and we're not going to know what happened to it until it's probably might be another 10 years.
Nah, I think we got about another year left on this, and then it'll sort out.
It'll be interesting. That's going to be very interesting.
And here's the thing, though. The actions that Gail has taken, generally speaking, is because she has been, it's well known, ill health, and she is probably most likely in need of funds. She doesn't have.
She's had quite a few medical issues last years.
So I mean, this is I'm sure that when Paul told her, "Hey, you can make $250,000 off what you have here," she was in heaven. She was in heaven, but now that caused her more problems than she expected.
So anyway, that's not any current issues, but that's just a recap. So that's our once a year recap, Eric, of what's going on.
Yeah, but it reminded me I have to look up the tax return for this year.
Yes.
Well, I have to get the latest filed one, which will probably be hopefully I think the last one I saw was 2019, so hopefully 2020 is in the bag, and we can look at that, because the tax returns have just been showing that this fund has been losing money for the last half a decade or more. Because
there's I remember when you looked at it, nothing's going in it anymore, and we really don't know how many administrative costs are leading, because you're allowed to charge administrative costs every year to the fund, and so all the fund is doing is slowly bleeding money out. We don't know, right. But you don't know how much, because there hasn't been a report, so we have no clue how many how much is bleeding out. I mean, if they opened up the account and there's only $10,000 in there, that's a story. Right? Yeah. Because you're like, whoa, Nelly, you had $250,000 in there, and now there's $10, $10 or whatever, $10,000.
I mean, it's obvious that the money was never even put into a low interest savings account.
No, because I remember you did that whole show on that, or you did a whole blog on that. That was they just it's weird. It's a weird situation.
So it's like being held on somebody's mattress or something like that, which is bizarre.
So one of the things I did want to talk about this week, that it was just kind of the story that I just kind of stumbled across, like, whoa, this is interesting. And I want to talk about it a little bit, just because I do think it's interesting, and it ties into the Paizo stuff we covered last year, or earlier this year or last year, I can't remember. But so Noble Knight Games is a company. Now, let me give you a little history here. So, okay, so let me give you history. Let me have the floor here for a second, Eric, if that's okay.
I'm going to answer Mr. Gunn's question.
Okay, you do that. So I started buying, selling, and trading online about between 92 and 94. I'm always really vague on it. My wife always tells me she knows the date, but I can't remember. And I used to do on one of the old AOL forums. There's about 5 or 6 of us. There was Jason Zavoda, who sadly passed away. The guy who did Dragon Bone games, he's still around doing stuff. There was a few. There was like 5 of us, and Sages Guild was one of them. That was another one. And what we did was we'd buy up D&D stuff and sell it on AOL forums. AOL had a forum where you'd go in and be buy, sell, and trade. They had different categories. When that got kind of shut down, we went to Usenet. Usenet was really big back then. And then when eBay popped up in 98, we all went to eBay, and some people formed stores. So about the mid-90s or so, this guy, Aaron Lear from was really interested in doing making this more than just kind of the way we did it. He wanted to actually set up a business. So I remember I have some old emails from him still from the 90s where he's like, hey, what's it like to run a game store? I'm like, well, I don't have really a game store. I just buy, sell, and trade stuff. Where do you get stuff? And how do you price it? He was asking a bunch of questions. So he started this company called Noble Knight Games. And they're to this day probably the premier place where you buy, sell, and trade old, out of print RPGs, newer stuff. They have a gigantic website. They just moved to a new location a couple years ago. They have a huge warehouse. They deal in thousands and thousands and thousands of items. They buy whole collections. They buy game stores out, and then they reprice it and sell it. And they've been around for 20 something years now, and 25 years, and they're the biggest in the business, and they're based in Madison, Wisconsin. They were in Janesville for a long time, probably the first 20 years or so. And the last few, they've been in Madison. But they're a pretty big operation. I went to their warehouse when they were in Janesville, and it's big, and it's a little confusing how they don't do stuff in alphabetic order or by. It's real weird. They have a numbering system that I think is very odd. It's really hard to find things. You just have to go by the number. There's a number, and as everything comes in, it's given a number. So, number 15703 might be a City of Greyhawk box set. Number 15074 might be a Shadowrun book. So it's just as it comes in. They don't classify it by type of game, genre, anything. So it's really weird, but it all runs pretty good. They've been making a lot of money for a lot of years now. Because why? Because they buy low and sell high, like any other used business, like Half Price Books, any business like that. They buy pennies on the dollar. If you ever try to sell stuff to them, they will lowball you. Good Lord, they will lowball you. It's much better just to sell your stuff on eBay or just go on a site and sell it to a collector like myself or somebody like that, because they're just there for somebody who wants to unload a collection and doesn't care what they get for it, because they will absolutely lowball you. And then they will turn around if something's valuable in there. They'll sell it for, usually people joke they sell it for 100 times what it's worth. Not quite that, but they usually mark prices up quite a bit. If you look at some of the more the higher level collectibles on there, they have prices way higher than normally sell. And they also, at this point, they do business on eBay also. They have a huge eBay presence. Huge eBay presence.
There was a controversy a couple of years ago that they were selling print on demand items from drive-through as limited collectibles.
Right.
And they were giving them, out of print prices when I could go on drive-through and buy it.
They've had a few minor controversies over there. One of the things that collectors, there's a lot. I won't name the collector's name, or two or three of them who are some of the biggest collectors in our business. You can probably guess the names. They will not do any business with Noble Knight Games, and the reason is they do not post actual pictures of items. They post stock photos. And then they will describe the item and say, "Oh, here's a beautiful picture of our item." Now, the description is it got peed on by a llama and thrown out the back of a car, and then your grandmother stepped on it. But the picture they have looks pristine because they don't take. They usually have to read the description very carefully, and then the scuttlebutt has always been if you return stuff, you get put on a like a ban, like kind of a ban list, like they don't like you then if you return stuff, even though they apparently have a really good. I've returned stuff to them before. I've never noticed any problem because I don't buy stuff I haven't bought stuff from at least 10 years, but I would buy stuff every once in a while if it wasn't the way it was described. I just, hey, this isn't the way I described. I never had a problem returning stuff. Now, I might have got shadow banned and just not know it, but apparently they don't like it when you return stuff. So they had a few minor hiccups over the years because, like I said, James said, tried to sell them. They offer me. Yeah, that's about right. They offer about 5 to 10%. when I got my gigantic Judges Guild collection that I've been selling now for the last 5 or 6 years, I had over 1,000 copies of some items. I went to Noble Knight just to offload some of them, and they would generally give me about 25 to 50 cents an item. They didn't give me a dollar an item. And some of the items I told them no, I'd rather throw it in the trash than to take 10 cents or 5 cents or whatever. Yeah, then but they I think they pay for your shipping or they do something in that regard.
Okay.
And that's basically when they get something they don't know, they screw up and they actually put in there it's not the right. I have found a couple deals when I have a feeling they mislabeled something or didn't know it was an obscure item. They didn't know what it was worth. So anyway, but they're the biggest dealer of used RPGs there is. There's if you wanted to buy something and you didn't want to deal with eBay, personally, I buy either private collections or I go to conventions or I buy eBay. I don't shop Noble Knight. Like I said, some of the biggest collectors of business will have nothing to do with them because their prices are too high and they don't describe items well. Anyway, so there was a new news item this week. They're becoming unionized. Now, for those, another little couple of tidbits. Aaron is basically retired at this point. He's made so much money from Noble Knight. He travels all over the world all the time. He's never there. He just doesn't go there. He used to go to conventions every once in a while. I remember a couple of times I was supposed to meet him like at Gary Con or Game Hole, but he doesn't even do that anymore. His brother pretty much runs the business. Aaron travels all year, all the time. So I think they employ about 50 people, maybe a little more than that. It was real vague when I was reading it. I've just talked to people that I know.
I don't even think they told you how many.
No, but I think I've heard people, they do about 50 people who take all the stuff in, they sort it out, they grade it, they ship it, this and that. Well, anyway, they decide they're not getting paid enough and they are forming a union, which is interesting on the heels of the Paizo union. For those who don't know,
Paizo CWA strikes again.
Yes, the Paizo writers or Paizo employees have unionized last year based on some stuff that Jessica Price let slip about how horrific the working conditions were there. And honestly, as much as I absolutely detest Jessica Price and everything she stands for, she's a miserable fucking human being, in my opinion, absolutely miserable. But she was right that this is the reason a union exists, because they were treating their employees that they basically had the company store, where because they had this apartments that they own an interest in, and you could go live in these apartments for cheap because it's not cheap to live in Seattle, right? But these apartments, they were living 2 to 3 to 5 to an apartment to save money because they were getting paid peanuts. Like, let's just say that other people that I know of that run game companies, when they looked at what they're being paid, were in shock, and they laughed and said, that's ridiculous. Nobody pays that in the business. And this is when Paizo was the number one game company, and they were making tons of money, hand over fist. Lisa Stevens is a millionaire several times over. She has one of the by the way, has one of the largest Star Wars collections in the world, because she just had enough money to go drop, I don't know, $50,000 on Darth Vader's original lightsaber. Whatever. She just, because they were making so much money at one point, and apparently the trickle down effect did not work there. It was horrible. So they formed a union, and I believe they're all unionized right now, right, Eric? Paizo?
Paizo actually unionized last October. Coincidentally, we are a year later, and I don't believe Noble Knight has recognized the union again. I don't think they made a statement at all. But Mike's not sure.
They were talking about bourbons. I'm drinking Buffalo Trace.
I got my
tonight.
Buffalo Trace.
Buffalo Trace is really good. Good stuff.
I haven't opened my Buffalo Trace up. When I found it up in the Poconos, I was like, I got to grab it. It was like $35.
You can't find it everywhere. It's weird.
No.
For some reason, you guys have a hard time finding it up north.
Yeah.
I remember Ben Barsh was all upset. He couldn't find it, and he came down here and found it. But, yeah, it's weird.
By the way, James, Castle Zaggis, Upper Works, Jurgsburg. If I found it for $50, should I snag it? Yes.
Sure. The box set itself sells for anywhere from $500 to $600. Probably, I think we had one in our auction last year at North Texas. Now, okay, I'll have a caveat here. It sold for $1,000, but that could have been. It was signed by Jeff Talanian, first of all. And second of all, the North Texas auction, some people bid more than it's actually worth because they like to help out the auction. All the money goes to help support the convention. But yes, we sold a copy of the convention last year for $1,000. But if you look on eBay, they run in the $500-$600 range for Castle League. They had to destroy all the remaining copies, and they ain't making any more ever, folks. That's one of those things that's just never going to come out again ever. Even if tomorrow Gail decided that she was changing her mind, they can publish stuff that they're not going to publish Castles of Gig in that form ever again. So, yes, please. And there's a bunch of there's a bunch of, there's the city of Eggsburg, which is also really hard to find. It's got a beautiful Darlene map in there. There's also some other pieces of the city of Eggsburg. That if you can find those are anything by Troller Games that has anything to do with Gygax, buy it if you find it for a reasonable price. It's out of print forever, let's just say. So yes, that's hard to find.
Kim was the buyer.
Yes, good job, Kim, because that's Kim. That's good. But anyway, so Noble 90s decided to unionize, and they said the usual issues that they're low pay, they're not getting paid enough, they're working too many hours, they don't have paid time off, they don't have vacation time. I know a little about this. I'm reluctant to talk about it too much because it's all unsubstantiated. I've heard of people that work there. Yes, it's not a great place to work. I've heard if you like games, it's great because every day these pallets of games come in, you get to rip through there going, oh my God, look at all this cool stuff. But you're not compensated for that. Everybody making money at that company is at the top. You're making whatever. Yeah, you're making minimum wage or whatever, $10 an hour or whatever. You're not getting very many benefits. So this is interesting because it's another small portion of the game world that the CWA is unionizing, which is interesting that they've made these inroads into the game world in the past year. First of all, Paizo, which a lot of people thought the whole reason they unionized Paizo was just to get a foot in the game industry, just so we could say, look, we're here in the game industry. And eventually they were going to parlay that into bigger things having to do with video game. Because one of the big gets for unions is they want to get the video game companies, because video game companies have truly horrific working conditions. Yeah. If you ever known somebody that works there, it's bad. There's huge burnout in that industry. They have these things called crunch times. For those who don't know what crunch times are, that's when you have to meet a deadline and they say all hands on deck. And I talked to Errol Otis. Errol Otis works for a company. He's Errol Otis, and he's had crunch times when they say, guess what? For the next 5 days, you're working around the clock, 24 hours. And we got to get this because we got to hit this deadline. They don't compensate you for that. You're just getting paid whatever your regular wage is, because usually it's not hourly, it's a salary, but you have to go to these crunch times. They say these crunch times, there's been articles on it, they will burn you out. Apparently the average amount of time that somebody spends in the game industry is 2 years, and then they're burnt out. They're out because they've just got worked to death with these companies. And so they're prime for having a union, because they do not treat video game companies do not treat their employees very well at all. No. And apparently, according to what you hear from Paizo, other companies don't either. There was a lot of speculation also, Eric. If you remember, this could be something to do with WotC. They wanted to get Paizo, and then eventually from Paizo, they wanted to move to WotC and see if they wanted to try to unionize WotC, which would have been huge for the unions
the article at ICV2 states that the Communication Workers of America have organized a number of companies in the geek culture space recently, including employees at nearby video game developer Raven Software, which is a major contributor to the Call of Duty franchise, RPG publisher Paizo Publishing, comic and graphic novel publisher Image Comics,
interesting.
And manga publisher 7 Seas Entertainment.
Interesting. Again, those are all big. Yeah, those are all big in their little fields. Definitely.
Now, this is the first retailer employee group that the union has sought to represent. So I don't think they're being brought into the fold of the CWA because they are a retailer union. They're being brought in because they're part of this geek sphere.
Sure.
And
Yes.
I again, when Mike and I talk about this stuff, we have no or little inside knowledge. Or if we have any inside knowledge, we will say so. I'm going to say I'm spitballing on this one. All right, there's no inside knowledge, but the CWA, which is the Communication Workers of America, which was formed
Mm-hmm.
to represent uh, AT&T when it was Ma Bell. It was formed to protect
Right.
employees that were covered by Ma Bell and its child companies like New York Tel, Pennsylvania Tel, all that back in the day. That's why it was formed. Nowadays, it covers some civilian members of the NYPD that are not in tech, not anywhere near tech.
Yeah,
So
interesting. Yeah.
they're an umbrella union, and for them to bring these small unions into the fold is not without cost. All right, they're not doing this of the kindness of their heart, and
Right.
I'm not anti-union. Somebody when I did my post the other day, it's like, oh well, you told your story about union busting at your old job, and I'm disturbed by this, and you basically sound like you're anti-union. I'm not anti-union. I was a union member for 20 years in the NYPD. Okay, I'm a lifetime member because when I retired, I paid my dues to be a lifetime member of my union. I think a good union can do a lot of good.
It's like anything else. Yeah, good. There's good and bad unions. My brother's part of a union that I think is a bad union. I mean, they help so he works at the airport. They help the employees, but if they have cameras all over where my brother works. He works in baggage. If you steal from baggage, you won't get fired. What the union will do is they'll say you have a problem, and you get a month off to go do rehab. And then after a month, you're back there to steal from more luggage. So, and the good employees don't like it. They said, "Well, why are we keeping this guy?" Well, because the union is protecting everybody. The union just wants to make sure you're not fired for something bad. Yeah, but this guy stole from a suitcase. Yeah, And so, yeah, the union, it does. There's a lot of good that come out of unions, and then there's goofball stuff like that. Also, you can't. My brother's job, you can't get fired for substance abuse issues. They will retain your job, and you have to. And once again, you get a 2-week, month-long vacation. They pay for all your rehab. And my brother literally knows people that plan on that as their yearly vacation.
Oh,
they relapse every year so they can get a month off free without any repercussions.
Yeah.
And then they come back going, yeah, I just had my month of rehab off. They plan for it. They plan their month of rehab.
That did similar. They weren't alcoholics, but they decided to go out in a binge and get in trouble for it.
Right.
So they could get sent to the farm for 4 to 6 weeks because, hey, it's free and I'm without responsibilities. And in their case,
I'm away from the wife, baby.
Kids, totally no stress.
As Wizard Tower says, also his wife's a teachers union. And Eric knows this. Boy, the New York Teachers Union, they put you in the rubber room. Remember the rubber room? Do they still have the rubber room there? And that's where they won't fire you. So let's say I'm having an affair with one of my students and I get found out. They don't fire me. What they do is they try to make me quit. And the reason how they try to trigger it is they said you're a place called the rubber room. And what the rubber room is, you have every morning you have to report to this room that the New York Teachers Union owns, and you just sit there all day long. You sit there for 8 hours, and you can do whatever you want. You can bring your iPod. You can bring a book. You can, and they just do this. And there's been people. I think John Stossel did a special on. There's people who've been in the rubber room for 5 years. They just come every day. They still get their paycheck. They don't have to teach anymore, but they're not going to let them with students. They want you to quit. They want to make you quit. And some people are like, nope, this sounds like a great job to me. I'm just going to go to the rubber room every day and just sit there and just get my paycheck and just, never quit. And so if you ever a chance, John Stossel did a really good special on a couple years ago. I can't remember.
He's got some great stuff on YouTube.
But it's the rubber room. So that's when the union, that's when I have issues with unions is when, yes, we're trying to protect you, but we're going to protect the really lousy members of the community do, because everybody deserves protection. But they serve a purpose, and the purpose is look at the. I think the Amazon unions are great. I'm glad that Amazon's finally unionizing. I know people that worked at Amazon. The work conditions are, frankly, they're terrible there. They're absolutely awful. They have mandated bathroom breaks. Look, I'm 59 years old, Eric. I can't mandate when I go to the bathroom at this point.
Oh, God.
I can't say that I'm going to go between 10 and 10:15 every day. I just can't do it. And so Amazon has this policy where you have to go to the bathroom at certain times, or you have to take X amount of time. And if not, they'll fire you. If you take, if you decide that one day you had some bad tacos the night before and you've really got to go to the bathroom and you're in there more than 15 minutes, you can get back to your workstation. You're fired. You took, 18 minutes and you only had 15 minutes. See you later. You're out of here. So I'm glad that Amazon is finally unionizing some of and they were underpaying. They have a lot of positions. Amazon are really lousy. You're on your feet for 8 hours a day. You're slinging heavy boxes. There's just a lot of issues. I won't even go into all Amazon's issues, but I think, yes, they serve a purpose. If you're getting treated lousy, they make it so. I'll tell you another story too. So my dad he had owned a warehouse in the 70s with another partner. Now, the sad part of the story is the other partner ended up stealing all the money, going to Mexico after a few years. They were actually doing really well. But the employees there at one point wanted to unionize. They said, we want to unionize because we don't like this. And so my dad and his partner called me in the office and said, okay, what do you guys want? Well, we want this. We want this. We want this. And my dad and his partner said, okay, that's absolutely reasonable. And so they got a pop machine, like a free pop machine. I worked there for a few summers. It's great. You go over there and push that and you get whatever pop. It was free. Right. There was no charge on it. They gave them they gave them what they wanted. So they didn't unionize. They're like, okay, you know what? We wanted A, B, and C. And you gave us A, B, and C. Thank you. And there was one thing when they said, we want something they couldn't give. They said, well, we're going to explain to you why we can't give you that, because here's our sales margins. We make this much. And they showed them the books. They said, look, we buy air conditioners for this much. We sell this. And it was a very good process because they actually gave them what they wanted. And so they decided not to unionize. And that's the problem. People unionize when they're not treated like that, when they're treated like, no, you're just going to work under these shitty conditions. We don't care what you want, that you want more time off and you want, insurance, this, that. We just don't care. And, that's when unions come in handy, is when that kind of shit happens. But if you sit there, if you're able to, or, and a lot of times, just the union coming in helps out the employees because the company gets scared. I know when my wife worked for American Airlines, very brief, in the 90s for just a few years, they had a couple times when they tried to wanted to come in there in a different kind of union. I'm sorry, Southwest, because Southwest, by the way, does not have a union. Right. Most of the airlines have a union, but they have been traditionally very responsive to their employees, and that's why they don't have a union. And they would try to unionize, and management would come in and say, well, what can we do? What can we do? We don't want you to unionize. So what do you want us to do? And they would give them a little something. I think a lot of times it was mostly cosmetic, like, oh, you want a pizza party on Fridays? We'll do pizza parties on Fridays, or whatever. Right. But some companies don't care. They're just like, nah, we'll just find somebody else to work here. We don't care about, and so that's when you need a union, when they're like, we're just going to pay you crappy. And if you don't like it, we'll find somebody else to pay crappy and treat like garbage. Boy, everybody's sharing their union stories in the comments. Yeah, well, there's so many union stories. As Gary says, UPS. I heard this UPS. They, even though they have a union, UPS used to be horrible too. UPS has got a lot better, Gary. I have friends that have worked there since then. But UPS and FedEx was notorious for having horrible working conditions. Yeah, horrible working conditions.
I know our local UPS facility, the drivers went on strike a number of years ago, and they were fired after they were on strike for a week. Wow. And they were unionized. My driver, who I got to know pretty well, see him frequently, see him in the street and honk, came back after 6 months because initially they weren't going to bring these people back. They finally did. They finally got rid of the scabs that were crossing the picket line. But, it's a crap shop when it comes to unions. Now, and with my sergeant's union, I loved our president. He became union president right before I got promoted, like a week before I got promoted. So my whole career was under one president in my union. Did some great things for the sergeants, and then after I retired, he got indicted on federal charges because apparently he was skimming the books. So
Oh,
I
ouch.
mean, you wouldn't have known it. And do I think that he was skimming the books? I think it's quite possible because in the NYPD, almost every union has had book skimmers. When they merged in the transit and housing police into the full NYPD, they also had to merge the
Mhm.
union into it. And when the transit union came in, the transit union came in with less than $1 million in their account, whereas housing had like
Mm.
55 million in their account. And the original NYPD
Interesting.
union for POs had to make up the difference for the incoming from transit. Why? Because there was apparently skimming or misallocation of funds. Happened with the corrections union. So, and my father was lifelong New York Tel, Bell Atlantic, Verizon, and he told stories of union corruption that they would hear about. So I'm not saying that, but and I'm
Well, but
pro
yeah,
union.
there's a reason you can't find Jimmy Hoffa anymore
Yeah,
because, look, the dude was taking in a lot. I'll tell you another union story. So my family came from Italy in the 20s over, and they formed a lot of businesses in New York, and one of their side businesses was nightclubs. My grandfather ran with his brother ran a lot of clubs there, and we have signed contracts this day of like Glenn Miller and just different people from the 40s and stuff would play their clubs. So at a certain point, they these people would come up to him, and this is they'd say, "Hey, we're from the union. We want to unionize your restaurant." Well, my guys don't need a union. Have these are all family. We're all part of the same family, so that we don't need a union. So we don't want a union. Yeah, you kind of do want a union. No, we don't really want a union. Yeah, you really do, because your store might burn down if you didn't have a union. Wouldn't that be awful? And so would get strong armed by these union thugs, and they would call the union was very tied into the mafia in New York in those days, the
right.
40s and the 50s. It was real tight. The mafia had a lot of people in union. So at one point they had these two guys, we'll call them Guido and Guido Jr. They would come and sit at the restaurant in a chair for all day, and they would leave. And they were people that the mafia basically said they're going to work at your store and get a paycheck, but they don't really work there. Wink, wink. This is to keep all the books, the record, so people don't know they're gangsters. Everybody knew they were gangsters. So
Right.
after a while, my grandfather got tired of this shit because they were making him take on all these people. They're so like, yeah, you have to join the union. And so they had to join the union. You can't get groceries, you can't get this and that. So they join the union. Oh, their store is gonna get burned down or whatever. And then they started doing stuff like that, like, oh, by the way, Guido and Guido Jr. are going to work for your store now. Well, who's paying for them? Well, you are. They're going to help you out. Yeah, they don't do anything all day. They sit in the corner booth and they drink beer and eat pizza. Well, that's just what Guido and Guido Jr. do. So he eventually got tired of it. He sold the whole business to his brother, my uncle Ange, and he moved the whole family to Florida. He got tired of it. He said he hated unions the rest of his life. He couldn't stand unions because he's like, they're all run by the. He would just go on. They're run by the mafia, and it's all gangsters, and it's blah blah blah. But that was New York City, so
Right. Yeah, I'm not. I don't doubt that story. So James has a story that when he worked at Walmart, we heard the tale of the time an entire store agreed to unionize together. From the store manager on down, and without batting an eyelash, Walmart just closed the
I
store.
would be would be surprised.
Listen,
There's protections against that. There's
yeah, there
protections
are.
that you're
And
not.
I
That
told
doesn't happen.
my experience again, which somehow made me anti-union by bringing up the actual story. When I worked at Stern's department store in the late '80s, early '90s, before I became a cop, I got to know because I always busted my hump, went out of my way to get everything done for my department. I got to know the divisional managers pretty well, and the operations manager became a good friend of mine. Was my
Right.
was the individual who actually made sure I became a cop. Did a lot of things, give me time off when my own manager wouldn't. So there was talk of unionizing at our location, and because Macy's has a history of being unionized, and Macy's was unionized at the time.
Mm.
And they would talk about bringing a union into our location. Now, our location was not a location that was owned by the company; they rented it. Okay, it was owned by the Gertz family, who used to own a department store named Gertz. Go figure. So, when this talk started happening, I innocently enough went to one of my divisionals and said, "Hey, Warren, you've heard this rumors about the talk about them wanting to unionize." He goes, "Oh yeah, I heard it. We've had some discussions." I don't know much about it. We didn't know. It was talk that was going on.
Yeah.
And I forget which parent union. It might have been the AFIC, whatever the hell it is. Yeah, the AFL.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the American Football League. But in any case,
Yeah. FLC.
I really don't, didn't know much about what's going on. I'm just curious. He goes, "Well, listen." He goes, I'm under the impression that if the store votes to unionize, within 6 months, its location will close. And I looked at him and he goes, "Listen, if you look at the business that we do, there's always a downswing. And when a downswing hits, they'll like to use that as an excuse to close the store. They won't do it right away, but they will do it shortly thereafter. And then everybody who was unionized will now have no place to work." I went, "Well, that would suck." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I'd be have a job too." It's not like So there was a disincentive to go unionize, and it wasn't a direct threat, but it was certainly, I guess you could say, fairly known that this was a likely outcome if we went unionized. So what James is talking about is not unheard of. Listen,
absolutely. I've heard those stories too. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
I did for a number of years. I did crime stats on the NYPD as a cop and as a sergeant. And one thing about statistics is they don't lie, but how you present them can tell different stories. And if you cherry pick that month where the location lost money, not going to be hard to do. Especially at that time, we were in a little mini recession. They have the excuse, and they were gonna use it if they felt they needed to. So again, doesn't make me anti-union. Just because I don't talk favorably about when unions do bullshit or when corporations do bullshit, doesn't make me anti-union. Just relating stories. Because I know.
Well, so we'll see what happens with this. So they, like I said, Noble Nine employees allege that they're being underpaid, no time off, no insurance, is that. So the initial returns seem to say that enough people were there voting pro-union that they're going to end up having union. It's just interesting because it just seems like such a small shop, because I've heard that their number of employees is about 50. That's what I've heard. About 50 full-time employees. Now they may have a lot more part-time people. Maybe they have maybe they have another 50 part-time. I don't know. Hell, maybe all 50 are part-time. That's the problem, is they want to be full-time. I don't know much of the details, but I guess we'll find. Hopefully, we'll hear a little bit more about that. I thought that was an interesting story because I've never heard of a game publisher, or actually a used game publisher, having to unionize. Because you would think that's the kind of job that, well, why would you want to keep? I mean, I don't know. I can see wanting to work with games. It's fun, but honestly, there's probably a lot more jobs that pay a lot more that aren't quite as onerous as working in a game store, having to unpack dirty boxes of games and make sure all the maps are inside and all that good stuff. But I would like that job, but if I wasn't being paid enough, I'd just go do something else. So
yeah.
I'm interested. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with that too, because that's going to be interesting to follow and see if. I'm sure they would love to get. I think WotC's the prize when you talk about gaming industry stuff. I think WotC's the one that's the one they would really love to get.
Well, this is all a chess game, and the moves go slowly. I swear that's why I see it. I'm catching up to your comment, folks.
So Gun says for US dollars, $8, you can have free speech. Elon, so to you. Hey, you know what? Honestly, I have no problem with that. I'm going to tell you right now. I hope Elon messes up Twitter something horrible, because I don't like Twitter. And Twitter's it's a miserable place.
It's an
As
echo chamber.
As Dave Chappelle famously said, Twitter is not a real place. It's not. It's just a hate hole. It's all it is. And if you look at, there's been some really good documentaries about Twitter and some stuff written about them. They exist because so if you look at, so one of the things about Twitter is they have they're flat in terms of, they don't ever get more people on Twitter or less people. They have this certain amount of people there. And so they just kind of keep it flat. And people wondered why. I did studies of it. They found that people stayed on Twitter because it was like they hate loved it. They want to check in every day and see bad things that happen, and they want to yell at other people and want to do that. But they only have a fixed amount of people. They don't really have as much influence as people think they do. And they also found out that this is a crazy stat. 90% of the posts are made by 10% of the user. So think about that. So 90% of the posts are made by 10% of the people. That the Twitter is a advertising forum for people like the Kardashians and other people like that. Everybody else on Twitter doesn't matter. They don't care about you. They care about making the money for the big people that get on Twitter and like to do trends and like to sell stuff and do whatever. It's a miserable platform in terms of, hate speech, and they're not very good at monitoring hate speech or getting people off if they do bad things. Yet somebody might make an innocuous comment and get kicked off. I mean, it's just a miserable spot. So I really hope Elon just goes there and just craps all over everything. I don't care. I don't care if Twitter's gone in a year. It would bother me.
It doesn't affect me.
So go ahead, Elon. I hope he charges $100 for a great blue check, because you know what? Kardashians will pay it. There's people that'll pay. People will pay $8 to have a blue check next to their name. He's not stupid in this. People will pay to have that extra little. Oh, I'm a special.
I got clout. Ooh.
I saw the other day that Stephen King said, "Well, I'm not paying $20 for a blue check." You think Elon cares? Or Stephen King doesn't pay $20? He doesn't care. He's going to get $20 from enough people who, well, I'm important. I'm definitely going to pay $20. I have to pay $20.
Ella says Noble Knight refused the union. Okay.
Interesting.
Wizards of the Coast failed the online order system of the latest secret lair, so it won't be doing much soon except being restructured. I got to look into that one.
Thank you, L, for that. Our buddy L. That's interesting. So I didn't see that, so I'll have to go back to the article I found. Maybe there's some follow-up on there, because that is very interesting.
Yep.
And I can see, look, small companies often refuse unions because they'll go up there and they'll say, look, and they'll tell you this, look, if we have a union, we're going to go out of business. And I've seen small companies do that. And they're usually the ones, like I was telling the story about my dad, they go in there and say, look, what can we do for you? What do we need to do to keep from being unionized? Because we can't survive a union. We're not going to be able to survive it. So maybe they need to do that. Maybe they need to go to their employees and work something out. I don't know. So,
well, Hasbro would have to unionize as Wizards of the Coast has no right to self-govern.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Now it's Wizard and Digital Gaming Division of Hasbro. Interesting. It's not
James says $20 to validate your narcissism. James, you'd be up there with you'd be up there with a $20 bill. No, I'm just kidding. James would not actually, but yes, I think Elon. Look, I don't agree with everything he does, but in this thing, he's absolutely right. People's egos will make them pay the $20. He's not stupid. People have enough of an ego they go, yeah, I'll pay $20 for a blue check or whatever, because people are dumb. I mean, that they'll pay that for something stupid like that.
Yep.
$8 is a deal for a lot of egos. Yeah. It is. It really is. I mean, they'll say $8. That's not a problem. Yeah, here you go, man. I had to turn that off, honey. I'm sorry. It kind of got burnt. I kept smelling it. So my wife left some hot dogs on the stove for about I turned it off on about a couple hours. As long as we had the show, so an hour and 45 minutes, we had hot dogs.
It
It smells really good here. It smells like hot dogs. It smells great in
Ooh.
the kitchen. So, but they were a little burnt on one side. I noticed. Don't you like burnt food though, right? Yeah, she likes crunchy burnt food. So I love Twitter. Yeah, I know, James. You would. Twitter is not. Yeah, James and Twitter would not go along. Yeah.
No.
James and I, we had a difference of opinion over the movie The Last Jedi. I did not like it. He liked it. And so we sat down at North Texas several years ago. We had a long talk about it. And we had a really good conversation about it. And I saw his point. And I guess hopefully he saw my points. Twitter doesn't allow for anything like that.
No.
If we talked about that on Twitter, it'd been James calling me an asshole and me calling James a piece of garbage. And we would have just gone from there. And that would have been, he'd have called me an alt-right Nazi, and I'd have called him a communist, and that would have been the discussion about the Jedi movie. So yeah, that's the problem with Twitter. It does not allow nuanced discussion in any way, shape, or form.
No, and that's a lot of social media. Let's be honest. People get their internet muscles. We've seen that, and
well, yeah, I didn't finish my thought. I was talking about about Twitter. They found out that users. So there's did studies on Twitter, and this is not just Twitter. This is a lot of social media platforms, including Facebook and stuff like that. Is people engage more readily when it's negative. In other words, you engage with those platforms with bad stuff, like someone is insulting you or they're talking bad about something. That is more engagement. So because of this, Twitter, and there's a really good documentary on the Facebook one. I can't remember the name off the bat. It's on Netflix, but it talks about how everything they have is geared towards negative, because negative is engagement. And so if you spend a lot of time on social media, you become a miserable human being, because all you see is the more negative you look at, the more negative it pushes towards you. And this is why they find a lot of these people who are really bad dudes that shoot up schools and stuff. They spend all this time on social media, and they look at their sites. They're getting pushed all these negative sites and negative things. And so, yeah, you can't let social media dictate your life like that. It's really a lousy place. The best thing to do with social media is make it serve you. Don't serve social media. You serve it. Or I'm sorry, it serves you. You don't serve it.
Thank you. You had me confused there for a second. I thought I knew what Mike was saying, but then
no. Let media serve you. So, like, what I do is when I get somebody that's really negative, I believe in negative vibes, right, and positive vibes. If I get somebody on my feed that's negative, I unfollow them. I don't want to need that negativity in my life all the time. I want positivity, and so you know what? You can clean up your Facebook page in one day. Just go through there and start removing everybody that posts political posts, that post doom and gloom posts, that post hate posts, and you would absolutely be shocked how much you can clean up your feed, where you're getting really, really nice. You're getting kitten pictures. You're getting beautiful kitten. You're getting awesome kitten pictures after that, because you get rid of all these negative people on your feed, and they just people like to spend negative.
You don't unfriend them, you unfollow them, so they don't realize it's like self.
Just unfollow, and they're still there. They think you're seeing all their posts, and you're not. I can't tell you how many people I've unfollowed on Facebook. There's a lot. There is a lot of people. I just unfollow, and then every once in a while, I'm like, oh, how come I'm not getting posts from X? Oh, I unfollowed them about 2 years ago. And then I'll push back follow, like, oh, that's why I unfollowed them.
Yes, that's why.
They haven't changed. They haven't changed at all. Yeah.
By the way, I just checked. We are at 1,699 subscribers. Just here.
Eric, we're 300 away from 2,000. What does 2,000 hold?
2,000. We'll find something good to do for 2,000. More giveaways.
We got to do something. Yeah, we got to do a really nice
more giveaways. We'll find a way. We do it every 500 anyway.
Yeah, we'll give you some nice. We'll give you some nice stuff. But yeah, we had a recent pickup of subscribers, which is great, and we've passed a few other people online, and we really appreciate it. And look, the Tavern Network is awesome, because now there's one-stop shopping for all your tavern personalities, including Joe the Lawyer, Joe Block, Rob Conley. Does Matt have his own page?
Working on his Hex Crawl series. So why that soon? Soon to be you.
I am. if I can figure out how to work this video thing, I'm going to give it a go. I have a format. I asked somebody to be a regular guest, and they turned me down. But I understand why they did. That they made a good point. They're a wonderful person, and I understand. But they would have been a great guest for my show, or a great sidekick. But they decided to say no. But I'll probably have regular guests, is what I'll do. But I'm pretty close to thinking I'm going to do a review show. It's going to be very obscure gaming items. We're gonna get people on like Bill Meinhardt and other collectors that collect obscure stuff. We're going to talk about what this item is, why it's so obscure, why this company nobody's ever heard of does this, and I think there's some meat on those bones. I think there's some really fun things we can look at. So I'm just trying to think of something to do this different. Nobody wants to do the same thing over and over. I don't watch most shows because it's the same thing. It's like, we're going to talk about the games, we're going to do reviews, yawn. Everybody does that. I mean, look, if you want a review show, go watch Glenn's show. Glenn does a great review show. We don't need another review show. Glenn does a good job, or whoever else does review shows.
James says that you're going to get
do something different. Give something different to the world. Don't just do the same thing everybody else is doing. His regular guest is going to be Peter's corpse. What the hell? Well, yeah, and she did turn me down. I don't know why, James. I made her a good deal. I made her a good offer. So,
we're not going to do a chicken dance.
Polka band. If we do polka, maybe we'll have polka music in the background. I don't know. We'll probably get demonetized. We had polka music. You can't have music on your show anymore unless it's original.
And that's the reason why when you watch a lot of these, I'm learning this now. Gee, it took me a while. Audio can get you in trouble, but you can play back whatever video clips you want without audio, and the gods at YouTube don't care and don't know.
Yeah, look at some of the review shows that they'll have in the background while they're talking about it. They have all this video playing, but there's no words and there's no audio. Yep. And that's how they get away with it. They show half the episode of She-Hulk, and yet there's no words, so they can show half the episode. It doesn't bother him. So James is not going to seek therapy. We've told him this for years. He won't do it, but we keep hoping he will. But
keep hope alive. Keep hope alive.
We need to have we need to have James on the show, and we can ask him his opinion of Rings of Power. I would love to know what James thinks of Rings of Power. But so far, everybody I know that's a big Tolkien guy has not been very kind with that show. But which, by the way, we'll probably be watching pretty soon. So I am interested. I'm interested. I'm going to watch it.
Tenkar's Tavern. I could do Benny Hill. Mike's going to be the little old guy, and I'm going to tap him on the head.
Oh, yeah.
James has a complex opinion.
Oh, it says when does not have a complex opinion.
Well, his opinion has a complex. That's the
well, maybe it's I heard people say this is that, look, I don't care why you're interested in Tolkien as long as you're interested in Tolkien, which that was my opinion of the original movies. For those who don't remember, when the original movies came out in the late 90s and early aughts, I had some hardcore Tolkien fans that wouldn't watch them. They say, "Oh, Tom Bombadil's not in it. They changed it up, blah blah." And my opinion always been, look, if it gets people to read the books, that's what's important, right?
Right.
And if somebody goes and sees Fellowship of the Ring and says, "This is really cool. I wonder how this book ends, or wonder what happens," and they pick up a book, then your purpose is served. You've got people interested in Tolkien's works, and I think there's a lot of evidence that happened. If you look at the numbers of Tolkien of trilogy books sold during the movies, it shot upwards. And for those that don't know, the Rings trilogy, I think, was voted the number one work of literature of the 20th century. And I think a lot of that had to do with the movies coming out at the end of the 90s and people getting really interested in Lord of the Rings again. So a Rumble channel. Yeah, we're gonna do a Rumble channel.
I think that listen, if we hit 5K subscribers on YouTube, we could then afford to diversify into another streaming service or another video service. But at the moment, I don't think we have a large enough following to justify splitting off and having a secondary channel on Rumble or BitChute or one of the other alternatives. And I'm not saying Rumble's a bad choice. I know that what's his name? That British guy, Brandt. He's got a live stream he does now on Rumble. Haven't actually checked it out on Rumble. Rumble on my TV sucks. Okay, it is not an easy to use interface on my Sony Android TV. I'm just gonna say YouTube is smooth as silk. Rumble is like an afterthought. So maybe at some point, but we got to get to that point, and we're not there yet. What you may see, what you will likely see before the end of the year, believe it or not, Substack has its own video section, and it's in beta. And I actually was
right, yeah.
I actually applied and got approved for it. So we may do bonus content that will only be seen by subscribers to the Substack. These will be short videos. If you miss out on it, it's not going to be world ending because you missed out on some content. But we'll likely start doing some of that from the people that are on the channels that are covered by the network before the end of the year. But we got to get to that point.
James went really dark here. That's dark. They stuck the landing about as well as Flight 93. Good Lord, dude, that is dark. So yeah, I heard some really negative comments on that. So I there's a lot of people with you on that. The finale was like eye roll from heaven, and so I think that from what I've heard, if you're really into Tolkien, it's problematic because you know too much. Zach Glazer wouldn't watch past the second episode because he was so pissed. I don't know. I've never read the Silmarillion, so I don't know the lore as much. It might not bother as much. I don't think it bothered my wife at all. She would just think, "Oh, it's a fantasy thing." She doesn't care. So brings a part of Dorothy more than Witcher. Yeah, as James said, when they fired Tom Shippey, I was also very because I'm sure he was pointing out stuff to him like, "Well, this wouldn't happen," and this to that. And they're probably like, "You know what, Tom? We're just really trying to make a fantasy thing here. We really don't care about exact dates, lore, and so you're fired. We're really not. We don't want you coming in and bitching about everything we do because." They knew at that point it's not going to be 100%, relevant to the books, right? They're going to throw stuff in. Yeah, that's what, as James said. My wife loved the movies, but she doesn't. I mean, I knew stuff was like, okay, well, Tom Bombadil's down here, and actually, Tom Bombadil exclusion from Lord of the Rings didn't bother me one bit because they only had so much time, even with the extended versions. And I only watch the extended versions nowadays when I watch it. I have all the extended versions. Even then they left out stuff. There's just so much stuff in those books, and I really enjoy that. I don't like to even watch the regular versions. I only watch the extended versions of those. But even then, there's stuff left out. I was always really upset they left out Scouring of the Shire. I think that's a really essential part of the whole saga. Is when they come back to the Shire, Frodo and Sam roll in, and a bunch of scumbags have taken it over, including Wormtongue, and they're like, fuck this. And so they go and kill them all, because they're like, no, we can't. Yeah, we're not. And it was just it's a great part of the book. They left that whole out. I understand thematically why I left it out because they had their climax. The climax was at Mount Doom. It's kind of hard to say, oh yeah, they're going to have like a second climax back at the Shire when they go back there and there's a bunch of shitheads, in charge of it. But, James Fonzie is not a bad. It's a bad Tolkien adaptation. Like the Hobbit film is not bad movies, just bad. I tend to agree with you from what I've heard and seen. That's probably it. But I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to give House of the Dragon a shot. We're going on vacation. We're going to have to watch Netflix every night. We're going to have something to do. So I'm going to have House of the Dragon rolling here. We're going to have Rings of Power. What else are we looking forward to? There's a couple of things that we're going to start hitting hard. Yellowstone starts in 2 weeks, and we're trashy Yellowstone fans because look, if you watch Dallas in the 90s or the 80s, that's all Yellowstone is. It's just Dallas set, and now, and it's Kevin Costner just chews up the scenes like a like a chew monster. I don't know. I mean, he just, it's a Yellowstone's great. It's trashy and wacky and violent, and it's just awesome. So we'll watch that probably. What else we got going on? We were big Dexter fans back in the day, and it had a horrible last season, horrible. And so I've heard better things about the new season. So we're gonna try to check out Dexter's new season, see if that holds up. Dexter was a great show the first couple of seasons. It's about a serial killer told from the point of view from a serial killer. He's a serial killer that kills serial killers, if that makes any sense.
Makes sense.
So his victims are other. He was adopted at a young age. His father realized there's something really wrong with this kid, and so instead of institutionalizing him, he said, "Look, we're going to train you to do good in the world." So he basically said, "You like to kill things. Why not just kill bad people? Kill serial killers." And so the whole thing is he's this sociopath, amoral, taught him to act like a human being. Taught him to have emotions, show emotions, act like you love people, this and that. But he goes and he kills serial killers. It's great. It's an interesting premise for the first 2 or 3 seasons. And then it kind of goes off the rails like most series do.
Right.
Yellowstone is empire with white people. Yeah. Gunn, you're right on that one too. Yeah. I think it's very Dallas-esque, Yes, it's still a thing. I think it has the number one. It's not only the number one ratings of the Paramount Network. Yellowstone has the number one ratings of any show on cable. It's and it's goofy. It's crazy show, but it's fun.
Oh, ding, 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 Mike. 1700.
Oh yes, thank you. Whoever, we're at 1700 with 300 to go. Let's see how long it takes us. So what is this day? It's November 2nd. So we'll see how long it takes us to get the last 300 before 2000. It'd be great if we get it before the end of the year. I mean, that might be pretty ambitious.
You never know.
Yeah. You never know. Maybe something really kick-ass will happen in the next, and we'll do like 5 shows on something, something really, really bizarre or something, Gail Gygax decides to sell the rights to to Gary to Alex Kamer. I mean, it's just something just like, oh my God, and so we'll have to do like 5 shows on that. And everybody's gonna get crazy. The problem is that L is James always needs a hug. I'm sorry, Gunn. James needs a hug, but nobody gives him a hug because his metaphorically all his hugs came from the Star Wars holiday special. And he's pined over the years. They've never had a sequel to it. He's really upset. Every night before he goes to bed, he plays the Bea Arthur song that she sings in the bar, and it just doesn't do it for him. He's broke. He's a broken man. He's a broken man, folks.
That is so sad. So sad. Oh wait,
they did have. They did have a sequel. What they had? There's another holiday special that I missed this. Oh dear. I need to know. I need links, James. I got to have links because nothing's better than that Bea Arthur song in the bar. Nothing is better than that. Where she says it's time to turn off the lights. Everybody, you can go home. You can't sleep here. I don't know, whatever she says. So that's a great moment.
All right, you got a question, Mike?
Mike, what's the David go? I don't know why anybody defends him. Sadly, everything's about politics nowadays. And Eric and I we talk about this a lot off the time. Politics, unfortunately, cloud everything, and you can't. And that's why Eric, especially Eric, not as much me. Eric gets in trouble by either far right or far left people that just absolutely detest him. Because he doesn't present as either right or left. Because, there's more people in the middle in this country than there are far right or far left. And the statistics bear that out. You have 20% far left, 20% far right, and the rest is in the middle. And so the statistics bear that out. People don't understand when you don't commit to something absolutely. You're not one way all the time. Right. And the problem with people like that defend new TSR is they think they're defending right-wing whatever, free speech or something. And you got to understand about Lanas and UTSR. He's he's conning you, man. He doesn't believe this stuff. This is all about him. Was all about him making money by holding, TSR hostage, by holding the copyrights hostage. It didn't work out, but he's just going to go down with the ship. It's not about politics. People seem to think it's about politics. Oh, well, he's fighting against woke TSR. No, he's not. He doesn't care. He's not interested in that. And so a lot of this is it's just connecting this with politics. Not everything in the world has to be politics. It just doesn't have to. You can like or dislike something just based on whatever. Because you like something doesn't mean you're right wing or left wing. Maybe you just like or dislike that thing. And that's one of the problems of our country is that we're equating that you like or dislike this thing with you being right or left. I know. I'll give you an example. My former partner, Doug Ray, passed away. He was the most apolitical person I've ever met in my life. He may have known who was president. I'm not even positive about that. He never voted his entire life. He just didn't believe in voting. He just didn't think it mattered. He thought the world was going to go this way, whether or not we vote or not, and my vote doesn't matter. So he never voted. And so he got accused regularly because of his beliefs of being, oh, you're just a right-wing stooge or something. He didn't even know what that meant. He didn't, or you must have voted for Trump. No, he didn't. He didn't vote for anybody. He might not know who Trump was. I'm not sure. But when it came to sports and politics, he knew nothing. He didn't know. We live in Dallas Cowboy country. He couldn't name 3 Dallas Cowboys. You spotted him: Emmitt Smith and Roger Staubach. He couldn't name another one. He would have no clue. And so everything he did was through this political. Oh, you must be fill in the blank. No, he wasn't. He was absolutely apolitical. He just didn't believe it. And there's a lot of people in our hobby like that don't like to be labeled one another. And there's certain people in our hobby who Eric and I talk about all the time that insist on labeling. It's like David Simpson calling us alt-right, whatever. What? Eric and I aren't alt-right anything. But he was far left, and so we must be, since we didn't agree with him, we had to be alt-right, right?
We were right of him. And that's the issue.
Yes.
If you are left of the far right, you are alt-left. If you are right of the far left, you are alt-right. Because the ones on the extremes only see things in black and white. Life is shades of gray, honestly. And yes, Gary, he knew who the president was. He just didn't care.
So Gary says he could name any cowboy from the 70s. That's probably true. He did know some 70s, but I don't know, Gary. I found some really distressing gaps in his knowledge sometimes too, because I would bring up Dallas Cowboys something like, I don't know who that is. I said, yes, you do. And so, but yeah, he lost interest in the Cowboys after. You're right, probably about 1980. He didn't care. He didn't know anybody that won the Super Bowl or whatever for that. But yeah, he was very. He just didn't. It wasn't important to him. Like I said, he thought voting was rigged anyway. He didn't think it mattered who you voted for. The same people are going to be controlled no matter what. He's not entirely wrong, I don't think. But anyway, but he got positioned a lot of time as a Trumper or an alt-righter, and he wasn't. This guy, he was not, because he didn't care about it enough. He didn't care. He cared about his job, and he cared about North Texas Convention. This and that. Just didn't care about politics. And so not everything that Eric and I do can be ascribed to a political philosophy. And that's the same, I think, of most people. Yet there's people in our community that think, oh, well, you believe this, you have to be that. And that just drives me nuts. Like last week when Eric had a video on this about somebody who I was arguing we weren't anti-vaxxers, and I was explaining why we weren't anti-vaxxers, and somebody jumped on and said, well, yeah, you're an anti-vaxxer because you believe this. And
you have alt-right positions because
I question the fact that it does. I didn't want to get into it. It's just dumb. It was just dumb. And somebody just got bent out of shape for it. By the way, that person got bent out of shape for it also got bent out of shape with somebody else. I want to Gygax's threads because they were talking about, oh, if you want to get healthy, go like on a juice fast. And this guy apparently he's a health Nazi lunatic because he went off on that guy too. Like, oh my God, that's the worst thing you can do to your body. Now, I'm not a doctor, but look, avoid anybody that says I'm not a doctor, but and just avoid them. Just turn them out, shut them off. That's it, because they will give you more medical advice than you ever want. The people who are not a doctor, but. And so this guy was, well, I'm not a doctor, because I said that, well, even Fauci questioned the efficiency of cloth masks.
Yeah.
And he did. He absolutely did. He did. He has interviews where he said, yeah, not that great. Unless you're wearing it. His philosophy was, they don't really work. N95s are, if you can wear a mask, wear an N95. If there's nothing else to grab around the house, wear a cloth mask. But they really don't serve very much for purpose. This guy flipped out on me and called me an alt-right lunatic because I said that.
Yes. Well,
so I'm just saying, not everything is a political philosophy.
But in this case, everything was politics. And I hate that everything. What I hate too, and the reason why I actually made my video last week on this one, because in this conversation, he starts out saying it was my stand on vaccines and my anti-mask position. My anti-mask position is I don't like wearing masks. All right, and if you can show me,
I don't either.
That's my opinion. No. I'm not giving medical advice on that one.
I wore a mask at Game Hole last year because Alex required it. I hated every freaking second of it. I did not like it. But I wanted to go to Game Hole, and that's what the rules were, and so I went and did it. But I didn't like it. I didn't want to do it.
I went to my cardiologist today. I was wearing my mask for like the hour and a half I was in the office because that's what you do. But so he starts out the conversation saying it was my issues on vaccines and my stand on vaccines and masks that were what makes me alt-right. And then later on, he goes, "Oh, I've never said anything about your stand on vaccines. I thought that was very balanced or some bullshit like that." I'm like, dude, you're gaslighting me in the same fucking conversation.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
That tells me all you're doing is trying to score points.
That was I'm not a doctor, but God, I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to tell you all these things that you're wrong about because I'm really going to act like a doctor, even though I'm not a doctor. But and like Eric said, look, my primary physician. Boy, get him behind closed doors. He is not. He had COVID twice. He was not a vaccine fan. He says he said I've had every shot there is to have, and I've caught COVID twice. It just doesn't. His opinion was vaccines are so every year when they do a flu shot, they have to decide which strain of flu they're going to put in the flu shot.
Right.
And the studies show they're right about 20% of the time, which isn't a very good average. So sometimes when you get a flu shot, you still get the flu. You're like, why did I get the flu? Well, it's because they didn't put that strain in the flu shot.
Right.
He had kind of the same opinion about the COVID. He said, look, I've had every shot there is, and I've got it twice. So it obviously doesn't work very good because I've had every shot there is because I had to because I'm a doctor and I see patients every day. But he just was very down on he's to this day he's still very down on the COVID vaccine. Just said I don't know how well it works or if it even works that great because I've had it twice. And now maybe he would lean towards, well, maybe I didn't have it as bad because I had the shot. Now that could be true. But it didn't prevent him from getting it, and he hated masks too. He absolutely my primary physician hates masks.
I'm going to make a statement, and I'm going to steal the statement from Jimmy Dore. Okay. Nobody here is a medical professional. Vaccines work to lessen the impact of the illness, and we're just quoting from stories that we've heard.
Yeah, we don't want to be we don't want to be
but now I'm going to that's just the preface to Mike. Have you seen the videos from the EU, from the European Parliament?
All right. No, I have not.
They actually brought I guess was it Pfizer or Moderna? The actual CEO wouldn't show up, but he sent a henchman. Okay, and they asked for a very clear answer to, did you know the efficacy of the vaccine in preventing transmission? right? Because it was billed as
Right.
preventing transmission. And
Oh, I know
Sarah
what you're
was
talking about. I did
Yeah.
see this. Yeah, I know what
Yeah.
you're talking about, Eric. I know where you're
And
going
she's
with this,
like, we moved at the speed of science, and we didn't have that information. So then, why was everybody parroting that line on every? So
Yeah.
if I find myself a bit skeptic about the government, again, skeptic going back to 2001 when Christy Whitman told all the ground zero workers at the World Trade Center that the air was safe to breathe.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I thought, well,
Thank
that
you,
seems weird,
Hodgkin,
but all right.
which has led to my and then treatment to Hodgkin's would lead to my congestive heart failure. Thank you for being so openly and honest, Christine, with the health
And not
condition
only
at the
that,
time.
Eric, how many of your fellow responders, both fire department and police and others, have died
Oh yeah,
of that over the past 20 something years?
innumerable,
Thousands,
yeah.
thousands, because they were absolutely wrong about what was in the air. It was asbestos. It was the worst. It was a cocktail of the worst things you can put in the human body. And only, and look, you had the lawsuit. You got your settlement, right, from the World Trade Fund, so whatever they call it, the settlement, because
Yep.
yes, you've had numerous health problems over the years,
Yeah.
and so have lots of other people
linked
because
to the World Trade Center. Now, Mr. Gunn said the vaccine does not prevent you from getting the disease or prevent you from dying. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. No, I'm not disagreeing with that. But that's not how it was sold. All right.
That's my problem too.
Yeah.
You can see the videos on YouTube. Go to the videos on YouTube. Have all the videos. There's wonderful videos about the show. Like people going on there and saying, if you take this shot, you're not going to die. And because they didn't have they didn't know. They didn't know at the time. They didn't know that it was true or not. They just want to get people to take the shot. So they said stuff like that. And I think that's the problem we have with things like that is, yes, you're told things, but later on they're like, well, we're going to revise that a little bit. Oh, you are? Well, yeah, you can actually die if you believe it or not. You can die. Look, I know people that didn't have the shot that caught COVID and they were fine. So it doesn't. I mean, it may prevent some people from dying. We just don't know. This is going to be something they're going to look at 10 years from now and be able to know more about it than they do now. They just don't know enough about it now.
75 years to
they're going to be able to say, okay, well, here's what we did wrong and here's what we did right. But at the time, they just had to do things really quickly. They just didn't know. And they're telling you things to make people not panic and to make you, the whole thing with the wear a mask. And I think, Eric, you make the greatest point ever. And I've talked this a lot about the mask thing is that there's nothing more ridiculous about the whole mask wearing. The fact that you can walk in a restaurant wearing a mask. As soon as you sit down, you can take off your mask, and then your germs and your bacteria know not to jump around anymore.
Right. You got that corner.
Very smart. Very smart. That stuff is intelligent.
But when you get to use the bathroom, Mike,
put that mask back on because when
no
you get up
longer
to walk to the bathroom,
the fact that you're sitting down to eat, it knows the rules.
And so then when you get up to leave the restaurant, you put the mask back on because it might jump off. But then once you get outside, you can take the mask off.
Yes.
It's a cluster. It's an absolute cluster F. And I think that's the thing we have problems with. Neither Eric and I are an anti-vax or in any way, shape, or form, but I do have a problem with the message sometimes that when people get all bent out of shape because you didn't do this or that or whatever, I'm like, look, we're just not going to know. There's many years before we're going to know what worked, what didn't work. Like I said, they've already talked about that. One of the things they're going to work on next time we have a pandemic is they're going to say, look, you need to have N95 masks. Cloth masks don't really do a lot. They're not really very useful. We're going to have to, like they gave us all free. I still have a bunch of free COVID tests in my closet here, my medicine closet. Maybe the next time they need to send us all N95 masks because apparently that's what works. And cloth masks might work, might not. We don't know.
Here, we're going to wrap up shortly, but I'm going to address something Mr. Gunn just said. The findings based on data across 48 states and over 2,500 counties. So the counties with high vaccine coverage have more than an 80% reduction in death rates. I'm not disagreeing with that. But that means it doesn't prevent you from dying. It lowers the opportunity of this disease to kill you. All right? Doesn't prevent it. In the case of a D&D player, it's like saying, oh, shit, I got my +5 cloak now, and I got my +3 ring of protection. My saves are at +8, and I'm a cleric, so I got great saves, and you can still fucking roll a 1.
I'm gonna go in there and kick that lich's ass because I can't die now. I've got all this shit on me.
Well,
Oh, I rolled a
good
1.
luck
I
on
rolled
that
a
one.
1. Oh, I rolled a 1. Yeah, don't get me started on TSA, James. I'll go for like 2 or 3 hours on that. The TSA is garbage organization. No, because issue. I think Mike's issue is don't wash hands. Just to let you in on something, I worked for a medical lab for 15 years. I probably wash my hands more than anyone else you might know. I wash my hands probably 15 times a day. Because when you work, so I was a customer service rep for a drug company. You touch so many gross doorknobs going in a doctor's office because we were selling doctor stuff. I must have every day I would go in probably 15 doctor's offices. I washed my hands all day long. And I tell you what, if we got more people to wash your hands, we wouldn't have as many problems as we do. Because believe me, your hands are gross after just one day of walking around. I every time I walk in and out of a doctor's office, I wash my hands because you touch your eyes, you touch your nose, you touch your mouth, any membrane, that stuff goes right in there. And so wash your hands. It's very good advice.
Wash your hands all day long. Wash your face. All right. So here we're gonna close out the show, getting off this topic because L.
We didn't want to
politics. James Bond get Mike in a Giant Lands game, and he will min-max a mask. Update. Apparently, the Giant Lands website is offline.
I saw this. Yes,
apparently,
we didn't talk about this,
a Mr. Dinehart is now an associate professor of film at a college in Florida. So don't expect too much more in the way of Giant Lands anytime soon.
Oh no! What are we going to do for our campaign we started with Skeeter and I, which we didn't really do anything except have a horrible time rolling up characters that took all night long, and it was so terrible. It was so bad. It was so bad.
It's the thing of nightmares. It truly, truly is. And yes, Mr. Gunn, I'd rather have the bonus. Hey, I'm
sure. I got the shot.
2 vax and a booster.
I'm an overweight over 50 guy. I played the odds. I'm an obese diabetic over 50 guy. Yeah, I took the odds.
But again, I go into this now with open eyes, knowing, so it doesn't prevent anything. It does push the odds in my favor, but that was never what a vaccine was supposed to do in the past. All right,
man, I'm getting dogpiled here in the comments. Fuck you, James. He's got everybody dogpiling me now. Good Lord. Wow. Well, I guess I'm glad I'm going on vacation. You know what? I might not even check in next week, Eric. I might just
no. All right, folks. On that note, before we drive Mike underground. All right. And L, not even addressing that one. Tennis not there. There.
By the way, next week we forgot to talk about the documentary. Maybe we'll try to talk about it next week if we don't have a guest. We totally forgot that. That's a big topic that looks like the documentaries are going to come out. So, but that's long. That's something we don't have time to talk about tonight.
We will talk about it later. We will certainly. Next week, Mike will be on vacation and still be here. So.
It's going to look it's going to look the same. I might just lie to you and tell you on vacation. Just do it in front of a backdrop like this. You might think,
I was supposed to be away last weekend, and I wound up not going because I got put on a new medication, which side effects could be like, upset stomach, nausea.
Eric, Viagra is not a new medication. I'm sorry, that wasn't it. Okay,
Montegro or something. All these names are so made up. It's like Ozempic, but Ozempic going to 11. So
look at this. L's jumping. L's my friend, and come on, man. Okay. We got to end this. I am getting dogpiled in the comments.
In any case,
absolutely dogpiled.
So the reason I didn't go away, but I'm looking to go away. Actually, I got an overnight trip in Jersey coming up at the beginning of December too. All right, so folks, on the bottom of the screen right now. Tenkar'sTavern.substack.com.
Nice.
Subscribe. Then you'll know.
Definitely subscribe. Yes, please. Please let us get. We need 300 more
with this channel. It's like the unofficial OSR video network. But we're going to include podcasts on it too. because we have a media conglomerate. You can't miss us. We've already touched on the endemic. It's no longer the coof, no longer the P word. All right, it is endemic. It's not going away. Use your common sense. Get medical advice there from a medical professional. Not from us. Not Mike and I. No, medical professional. Yes.
No, and we're not medical professionals.
No,
and neither is any. Neither people that say if somebody tells you I'm not a medical professional, but you need to cut it right there. Just say okay. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you to everybody in the live stream. You made this a great episode. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
As always, be safe, be well. God bless. Roll those dice. Roll them well. I will be back again. Well, random video tomorrow. Discord at 9 p.m. Eastern.
Random generated party Friday?
No, I think it's Glenn.
Oh, Glenn.
Okay. And then, it's Glenn. And then on Saturday, 8 p.m. Rich and I for Gamers Health. We'll get you the updates and talk about whatever.
Oh yeah, well, I've been tuning in for Gamers Health a lot more than I did. I used to not tune into Gamers Health all the time because Saturday night was a busy night for me. But I've been tuning in. I like me some Gamers Health now.
Thank you. All right, folks. On that note, we's out of here.
Later.
Or something like that. Laters.